President-elect Trump recently warned Russian leader Vladimir Putin not to escalate the Ukrainian conflict further. Even if Trump does manage to negotiate with Putin, any deal with Russia will be temporary rather than a trustworthy long-term conclusion. So, what does Trump's victory mean for the Russian-Ukraine conflict? Well, believe it or not, Ukraine is happy about Trump winning the presidential election. Trump has been very vocal about ending the war in Ukraine, saying how he can completely put an end to it all within 24 hours of him taking office.
If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours.
Despite President Putin stating he will negotiate with Trump after the US election, it doesn't necessarily mean he will ultimately end the Ukraine invasion. It is also worth mentioning that Trump openly stated that he would not give in to every single Russian demand. So when Trump said he would make some deals with Putin to stop the war, did he falsely make such a statement for election votes, or have genuine plans regarding the situation? Ending the war means all the grounds in the war zone are frozen in place to keep both sides happy. In other words, Ukraine will keep what they have left, and Russia won't invade further. Unfortunately, this is not something Putin can settle on. Russia needs all of the land of Ukraine, and the reason behind this is because Russia is not very defensible to potential invaders due to its massive unprotected land border with Europe. It has no barriers like mountains or rivers, etc., just a flat landscape allowing just about anyone to enter Russia. The capital of Russia, Moscow, is easily exposed if invaded using the Europe and Russia border. However, if Russia takes over Ukraine and turns it into a client state, they will have the Carpathian Mountain as a barrier from potential attackers. If advanced further, Russia will have the best protected border from Europe if they invade the Baltics and Poland. Because of the barrier of Sudety on the south of Poland, Russia will gain a huge advantage. When Russia takes over Poland, instead of them needing to protect an enormous boundary of around 14,000 miles like they are right now, it will come down to only 200 miles. So, one of the biggest reasons behind this war is to ensure a better defense barrier for Russia. It is nearly impossible for Putin to make any sort of deal involving the surrender of this high-priority objective. Now, that is not the only factor to consider here. Currently, Russia is either geared towards making weapons or extracting oil from the ground to sell to China. The money they get from selling oil is then paid to the Russian workers for manufacturing more weapons used in the war. The entire economy of Russia relies on this very war, and if that comes to a stop, Russia's economy will instantly collapse. When we refer to the long recession of 1945 in the United States, it was because of the shift from wartime to peace. But what ultimately saved the Americans from massive unemployment was due to the country becoming a worldwide exporter. Europe and Asia were so devastated by the war that they needed to buy goods, and America contributed by selling the demanding products. Now Russia will not be granted an opportunity like this. They don't have anything to contribute to the world, aside from oil, raw materials, and weapons. But there is a good portion of the world that will never buy from Russia, regardless of their condition, because Russia laid out multiple reasons why they are untrusted. If they are buying from Russia and the nation involves itself in another war, Russia will cut those supplies to all but allied countries like China. Putin is a dictator and will do anything to stay in power, and if he stops the war, the economy of his country will collapse and he'll lose all the power he has. This scenario is far from his best interest, hence why he will never make agreements resulting in such outcomes. President Putin needs war for the betterment of his nation's defense and economy. As a leader of Russia and a dictator solely prioritizing the desperate need to remain in power, it is unrealistic to think Putin will put aside any of his current objectives, which entirely serve his needs in the future. Trump is left in a very difficult position. Him simply getting in between to end the war isn't enough to keep both sides happy. Ending the war is beneficial to Ukraine, but not Russia. Even if Trump threatens Putin to back out, would it be reasonable for Putin as a leader to stand down at the price of an economic crash and national defense? As mentioned before, any deal with Russia will be temporary rather than a trustworthy long-term conclusion. So, if anything, Putin will postpone his war plans for Trump's temporary satisfaction. He will use the time to further build up the military power and surprise attack Ukraine again once given the opportunity. Overall, this is a complicated situation with no promising outcome. Only time will reveal how it unfolds. For now, all we can do is hope for the best.